Alright, let's see what they picked. Community tab. We got next up, what would you prefer? Surprise us. Well, check my notes. See if anything is interesting. Oh, Canon EOS M100 video. Well, you saw it in the opening. We're going to talk about the Canon EOS M100. Good and bad. Let's get started. Handling wise, it is rough, very small grip. Even with the 22mm lens, it's a little challenging. You want to use some type of strap, some type of wrist strap to make it work better. The on-off button and this dial on the top are not a great setup. It's easy to press the button on accident, and I've done it a few times. I've put it in a cargo pants pocket, had the camera on, and then the lens extends while it has pressure on it, and it's just not a great setup. The camera does not have a hot shoe. That can be a problem if this is your only camera and you want to get more into photography, more into lighting and such. You're just not going to be able to do anything with that. So that can be a hassle. Now, I'm not sure, maybe you can use this built-in flash to trigger other ones, so that's potentially an option, but I haven't personally tried it. No mic port, so if you want to do audio, high quality audio, and push it into the camera, you're just not going to be able to do that. There is no dedicated mode dial on this camera. You have to go into the screen on the top and select it and switch it up. Now, I've seen people actually think this camera doesn't have any type of advanced manual control, but it actually does. It has full manual in photos and video. You just have to know where to go on the screen to get into that and switch it up. So it's in there, it's just not the greatest setup with no mode dial on the camera. As I mentioned, the camera is small and compact, but it's still not small enough to really fit well in a pocket. I do have cargo pants and I wear them a lot. And in this case, it does work all right with the 22mm lens, but no other lens will fit in that large pocket. The interface on the camera is decent. It works like the standard Canon menus, but in this specific case on the M100, it has this animation to it which lags things a little bit. I don't know why they have it in there because it's not in the M50. Now they do have different processors. The M50 has a more recent processor, but for whatever reason, these animations, you can't turn them off and they're irritating. Control adjustments are very limited on this camera. You can change a few things just slightly, like this little asterisk button on the back. You can give it a few different features like just autofocus, or just auto exposure lock, but really you can't adjust things very well in this camera. Like the M50, the aperture priority mode in this camera does not have a minimum shutter speed setting, so that leaves it up to chance of the camera and if it's gonna pick a shutter speed that works properly. And I just don't prefer to use aperture priority without that minimum shutter speed, so that's a negative for me. One of the biggest irritations I've found is a little quirk with autofocus. You can't easily turn on and turn off autofocus with their native lenses because they don't have any type of switch on them. So you have to go into the settings tab 1, page 3, focus mode, and then you can turn on or off the autofocus. That's for photos mostly, but it does it in video as well, and it fully cuts it off. Now, in video mode, there is a servo icon on the actual screen you can turn off, which is very good that it's there, but if you go into the menus, it turns back on. It's just really irritating that it won't stay off when I want it off because then it changes the focus and just not a good setup for that. The dual pixel autofocus is a little bit older in this camera compared to the M50. It's not quite as good, but it's still very nice. So kind of a negative and positive with that. That's pretty much all I have with negatives for the moment on this camera. I'm going to go into some of the positives that I've found. This is a low-cost, compact APS-C camera with interchangeable lenses. With the price point that it's at, I mean, it's really hard to complain about this camera because you get that nice large sensor, you get options to get really beautiful photos with great lenses. Considering the price and what else is out there around this price new is just a really solid option to get started with. So I tend to suggest this camera to people if they're just starting out and they want something good, definitely better than a phone. This is it. Considering the space on this camera, the screen is very nice. It has the full touch capability to it, the standard Canon menus, they work really well. I know I mentioned the weird animation to it, but besides that, it works very, very well. And the screen itself does fully tilt forward to face the lens, which is nice to have in a lot of situations. I do B-roll with this camera, and just being able to see that I am in the frame from far away, it works really well for that. That screen is nice setup and definitely feels pretty solid. There's no complaints about the screen. One thing this camera does better than the M50 is where the memory card is. It's on the side, it's easier to access. If I want to pull the memory card and I don't have to change the battery or anything, I can easily do that without taking out the plate I usually have on the camera for the tripod. So the memory card location is good, it works well. At this price point, you can actually find some cameras that don't have RAW supports in them. They just shoot JPEGs, which is kind of crazy to me because RAW is a really important feature for photographers in my opinion. It's definitely good that this camera has the CR2 RAW support in it. As I mentioned in the negatives, it does have the dual pixel autofocus. Maybe not as good as the M50, but still very, very good in a lot of situations. It works well. Great in video. Really no complaints about autofocus. The camera does have peaking, so with manual focus that really helps out. You can also zoom in, of course, to get critical focus if you need that, but having peaking is very nice in photo and video mode. I probably should have put this in the negatives as well, but it does have wireless connectivity. Now it's not as good as the M50, it's definitely not as featured, but it does work with the app and it does what I need it to do when I use it. So wireless connectivity is decent. All that said, I think the M100 is a great starter camera and definitely good as a backup or some type of B-roll camera, which is what I use it for mostly. I do take photos with it as well. I take it to conventions when I want the smallest setup possible, so that's usually the 22 with the M100. Does what I need to do. Small, compact, lower cost, and generally if you don't need a lot of features from the M50, you just want that simple basic camera that takes good photos, has a large sensor, and it's a decent cost, M100 is it in this lineup. Hope you enjoyed this video on the M100. Just a quick talk about the good and the bad that I've seen so far. Nice little camera. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Scott for Every Banzai. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. That helps me out a lot. Likes and shares help out a lot as well. Thanks again.